There will be showers across much of Scotland, these heaviest in the north and west, where the hail and thunder is more likely. As further southeast, it is looking drier and brighter. Whilst there will also be showers across far western parts of Northern Ireland this lunchtime, elsewhere it should be mostly dry. These showers may become more widespread later though. Showers will continue for many as we go through this afternoon, with more persistent rain for parts of England. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on your TV, radio and online, with you all the way through until midday. Loads to talk about today. Why are Harry and Meghan trying to steal the spotlight off our Queen in her Jubilee year? Also, a very interesting report from Sweden, bit left field this, but they've got massive social issues there. You're going to get stuck into that.
Yes, we'll be getting all into that very shortly, and make sure you get in touch with your views, GBViews at gbnews.uk. We'll get to those throughout the programme, as many as we can, but first, let's give you the latest headlines.
A very good morning. It's just 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will defend all of Ukraine after Russia launched a large-scale offensive in the east of the country. In an overnight address, Zelensky said the battle for the Donbas region has begun. Ukraine said no humanitarian corridors have been agreed for the third day now in a row. This morning, Russia's defense ministry claims to have struck over 1,200 targets in the country. Ukraine's military says Moscow's forces have sent further weapons and military equipment across the border.
The enemy is trying to continue offensive operations in the Eastern Operational Zone in order to establish full control over the territory of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, as well as to maintain a land corridor with the temporarily occupied Crimea. Missile and airstrikes on civilian targets throughout Ukraine do not stop.
Now, earlier, Vladimir Klitschko, who is the brother of the mayor of Ukraine's capital, well, he told us that the country will continue to fight Russia.
There's no option. It's about death and life. It's about defending and standing for your home, for your family, here and against this aggression. And you know what? We need to stop Russia in Ukraine. We need partners. We need support of our allies. We need to stop this Russian aggression, Russian war and criminal war in Ukraine now.
President Joe Biden's going to hold a phone call with G7, EU and NATO leaders today to discuss the latest developments in Ukraine and also how different nations can hold Moscow to account. Well, the spokesperson for the Pentagon, John Kirby, said the besieged city of Mariupol is still under Ukrainian control, despite relentless attacks from Russia. In the UK now, Boris Johnson's going to face MPs today for the first time since he was fined by police for breaking coronavirus lockdown rules. The Prime Minister is expected to apologise again, but also to urge the Commons to focus on other issues. Opposition parties insist that Boris Johnson misled Parliament when he said all rules had been followed in Downing Street. Chris Curtis is head of political polling at Opinion Research, and he told us another apology won't be enough to restore the Prime Minister's reputation.
Obviously the best card he's got at the moment, but I think he's going to need to rebuild his reputation and the Conservative Party's reputation on some of those other issues if he wants to sort of stand a chance at holding on to the top job and winning the next general election whenever it comes.
Ministers have been told to order civil servants working from home to go back to the office. Jacob Rees-Mogg is the Minister for Government Efficiency, and he's written to Cabinet members saying they need to send a clear message to civil servants to bring about a rapid return to face-to-face work. The Daily Telegraph is reporting that in some government departments, up to 3/4 of staff are still working from home. Train tickets for this spring are going on sale at a significant discount today. It's being called the Great British Rail Sale. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, says more than 1 million tickets will be up to 50% off this month and next. The sale's thought to be the first of its kind, and it's part of a bid to help passengers with the rising costs of living and encourage people to take the train. The former boxing world champion Amir Khan says he was robbed at gunpoint by 2 men while out with his wife in London last night. The 35-year-old tweeted explaining that his watch was taken off him in East London. He added that his wife and himself were both unharmed. Scotland Yard have said that an investigation has begun and police are following a number of inquiries. The United States will no longer enforce its COVID mask mandate on public transport. A federal judge in Florida ruled that the directive was unlawful. Well, that overturned a key White House policy aiming to reduce the spread of the infection. US health officials had only extended the rule just last week, aiming to ensure that travellers wore masks on planes, trains and in taxis. Women who are overweight are at a higher risk of developing womb cancer. That's according to a new study. And researchers from the University of Bristol looked at genetic samples from 120,000 women in 7 countries, including the UK. They found that for every 5 extra body mass index units that a woman put on, they then increased the risk of developing womb cancer by 88%. You're up to date now on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. It's just gone 10:06, and you're watching us on your radio or watching us on your TV, listening to us on your radio or online, and here's what you can expect today.
Yes, indeed. It's day 55 now of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Intense fighting for the Donbass region has now begun, with tanks and artillery engaging in a large-scale assault in eastern Ukraine. We'll be going live to Kiev to talk to a Ukrainian MP for the very latest on this particular phase of that conflict.
Yes, and the hospitality industry here at home is facing a, quote, quadruple whammy of a recruitment crisis, rising costs, less revenue and increased taxes. We'll be talking to an expert on what is needed to help businesses thrive.
Yes, absolutely. Now, energy bosses as well are set to be grilled by MPs this morning as they try to figure a way out of the spiralling cost of living crisis affecting millions of British homes. So we'll be going live to Parliament and giving you reactions by experts so you can keep an eye on the money in your pocket.
Yes, that's all coming up over the next 2 hours and much more as well across the programme. And you can get in touch with your views. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email as usual. But first, Patrick's going to give his views on Harry and Meghan stealing the spotlight from our Queen.
Harry and Meghan are trying to make the Queen's Platinum Jubilee all about them. They had a not-so-secret meeting with the Queen. Apparently Prince Charles was there for just 15 minutes. They may well have had their Netflix crew in tow as well, naturally. But now all the headlines are, will they, won't they? They've reportedly been invited to stand on the royal balcony at Buckingham Palace during the Jubilee ceremony. But now this is what the headlines are all about, isn't it? They could just stop that and put the full focus back on our dear Queen by coming out and issuing a statement saying whether or not they're definitely going to be there. But they haven't done that yet. Why? Well, in my opinion, it's because they're trying to reduce one of the most poignant, classy, important, symbolic, emotional days in royal history to the gossip sections of tabloid papers. They want the build-up to be all about whispers as to whether or not they'll actually attend. And you can see it now, can't you? The pageantry of it all. Millions of people around the country lining the streets, having garden parties, the Mall packed with people proudly waving our Union Jack, celebrating the wonderful life and reign of the most remarkable woman, arguably, that this country has ever had the privilege of producing. And actually, instead of just looking at the Queen singularly, people are trying to peer behind her to see if Harry and Meghan have bothered to drag themselves out of their Californian mansion. They could just nip all that in the bud now by saying whether or not they'll be there, and then, of course, the day can be what it's supposed to be, a total focus on our Queen. Apparently, Harry and Meghan told our Queen that she would get to see Archie and Lilibet sometime in the near future. Oh, well, that's big of them, isn't it? If it was up to me, I'd just take this Jubilee decision out of their hands and ban them. They heaped misery on the Queen and Prince Philip during the final weeks of his life. They accused the royal family of being racist. They didn't attend Prince Philip's memorial because they didn't feel safe. They're being followed around by a Netflix crew, and now they're keeping everyone hanging on as to whether or not they'll grace Buckingham Palace's balcony with their presence. Just tell them not to come. They're a circus. They're just a sideshow, and I think it's time this country brought down the curtain on it.
I think it would not show kindness to ban them completely from the Queen's Jubilee. I mean, after all, she is his grandmother, and I think they shouldn't actively ban them. I completely agree that they are stealing the spotlight. They have done that always, haven't they, really? But I don't think they're ill-intentioned, shall I say. I don't think they're maliciously sort of trying to steal the spotlight from the Queen. I think what they're doing is, you know, they want to make a lot of money and they want to control the narrative on their terms. They want to control their appearances and do appearances on their terms. I'd struggle to believe that from Harry it's with malicious intent.
I don't know, you know, I just don't know anymore. I mean, I think the guy clearly isn't covering himself in glory. You know, it's obviously not the brains of Britain, certainly if he's being led around like this. And I just find it astonishing. And I think, you know, just clear it up. And you know, it's a really tricky one, really, because it's the idea that loads of people really care. And I know people are going to go, well, hang on a minute, you've just done a monologue on it. I care about the effect that this may well have on the Queen. I care about the fact that it's a sideshow that we don't need on what is supposed to be the day of her life. I actually just don't give a stuff whether or not Meghan and Harry themselves come. I think it's only them who think that people are waiting with bated breath for it. Yeah. I do care about the fact that they are taking the focus off the Queen, and that's my issue. I'd be highly surprised if they didn't actually attend, because they can't not, surely. I mean, they've just been to the Invictus Games, which, of course, very close to Harry's heart. I think he actually co-founded the Invictus Games, if I'm not wrong. They can't turn up to the Invictus Games and then refuse to turn up to their, you know, his grandmother's Jubilee, the Queen's Platinum. Absolutely.
Surely not. But then again, you never know with them.
No, you never know with them at all. Will it just be Harry as well? We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, GBNews.uk, a load of these people, a load of you, actually, I should say, are flooding in. They will make money out of this for sure, says Christopher. And yeah, does the UK deserve to have them on the balcony? It's a bit of sarcasm there from Yvonne, of course. So there we go. GBViews at GBNews.uk. I also like the fact that we're really colour coordinated today. If you're listening on radio, Mercy and I have both gone for a splash of pink, haven't we?
I don't think that's called colour coordination.
Is it not?
So we wear the same colours sometimes.
Yeah.
Often.
I think it's quite...
Colour coordination would be you wearing a pink blazer as well. Now, that would be...
Well, I mean, you know, if the people want to see it. Yeah. You know, if the people want to see it. But, yes.
Yes. Now, moving on to something very serious. Cities and towns in eastern Ukraine have been rocked by fresh explosions as Russia stepped up its all-out assault on the Donbas region last night. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that the battle for the Donbas region has begun after Russia bombarded Lviv with at least 4 missile strikes and seized control of Crimea, a town in the eastern Luhansk region.
As Russian forces launch fresh offensives, Ukrainian forces in Mariupol have resisted Russian attacks and rejected a deadline for surrender. Now, Kira Rudik is a member of Ukrainian Parliament and leader of the political party Golos, and she joins us now. Thank you very much for coming back on the show. So, look, very concerning reports now coming out of eastern Ukraine. The Russians really are going for it, aren't they?
Yes, we actually anticipated that this battle will begin soon. And so this night we have seen the first signs of it. The battle is between Russian army and Ukrainian army, which is very unusual for Russians because they usually used to fight Ukrainian civilians rather than regular army. So we are very much sure that our men and women in the army will stand till the last man standing. However, there is a question. Are the promises of weapons will become actually weapons in the nearest future? We know there is like a 2-3 weeks lag in between the politicians promising that they will send something to Ukraine and us actually receiving it. So I have no doubt in bravery of our soldiers. However, I have questions regarding would we have enough supplies and would we have enough weapons? Because we are fighting one of the largest armies in the world with lots of resources, with lots of capacities. Putin is obviously going onto offense. You have seen the attacks of the western city of Lviv, where most of the Ukrainian refugees have fled, is a sign saying there is no place in your country where you would feel safe. And this is true, because as of right now, we are unable to protect any of our cities from the Air Force attacks, any of our roads or convoys from being attacked from the sky. So all the matters, the protection of Mariupol, the fight on Donbas, and the protection of the peaceful cities, it comes down to only one question. Would we get Air Force protection or no? And if we would get it, when it will arrive? So we still need the fighter jet, the artillery and Air Force protection systems, and we need it systematically because every single day we are actually using and expanding on more weaponry and supplies than we are getting from the whole world.
No, indeed. How is morale then? Because I think there was probably an initial buzz of morale, I suppose, when the resistance was working really, really well, and then the Russians have regrouped and they're coming back again. The Ukrainians still strong in their hearts, do you think?
Yes, of course we are strong in our hearts. We are united more than ever, and we know that we wouldn't have any other motherland. So we have to protect what is ours. We have to take care of each other, and we have to give all our resources, possible and impossible, to our army. You know, people right now are asking, should they come back to Kiev or other cities? And the answer now and always is only one. You ask yourself where you would be the most useful to your country. And if you figure out that it is like in the east at the fire spot, then you go there. If you know you're like the most useful on the west, even if it's not actually safe there, you go there and you help the refugees. And this is how our country acts right now. We always ask ourselves this question: where would we be able to be the best of ourselves? Where would be able to fight Russians at our best, at our strongest?
Yes, OK, that's really interesting, actually. So civilians around Ukraine are actually kind of moving to the hotspots where they can be most useful, whether it's in a humanitarian sense or a military sense. And I'm not sure how the Russians can compensate for that, actually, because it's a very unconventional defence. And it's fascinating that you said that. But just in terms of the weapons, returning to the weapons, now, I understand that the UK has been pretty good when it comes to supplying you weapons. I'm sure that you want more. I hope you do get more. At what point do you think the European Union countries are going to have to start doing more for you? Because if I was you, I'd be absolutely fuming. 5,000 helmets from Germany, That, to me, says that the likes of Germany, the likes of France, the likes of Italy would be actually happy or accepting of Ukraine falling to Russia, because they're not actually pulling their finger out, are they?
It's absolutely unprecedented difference between countries that are actually supporting us. It's like the United Kingdom, the United States, and countries that are saying that they are supporting us and actually sending us dimes on the dollar promises. And we obviously are expecting that every country would chip in, because we are not fighting only for ourselves. We are fighting to stop Russia in Ukraine so they wouldn't come further. And this is the question about the crisis in European Union. Why it is European Union, but some countries are protecting themselves and helping to protect us, and some countries are saying, okay, that would be not us, we don't really care what's happening. And obviously right now we are working with diplomats, with politicians, to make sure that politicians actually execute on what people think and what people are hoping them for. Because we have seen German polls, German people are for the Ukrainian support. People in France are for support of Ukrainians. And the politicians are just not executing on people's opinion. And they will probably pay the high price for that in the next elections.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kira, thank you so much for making time to come and speak to us again. We know you're a regular on this show now, and we really appreciate you keeping us updated on the situation there. Kira Rudik, a member of the Ukrainian Parliament and leader of the political party Golos. Now, after the break, we're going to be talking about a lot more, so stay with us and keep your thoughts coming into gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Hello there, I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. And after what wasn't a bad weekend for most places, some sunny spells to start the new week. Showers too, more so than over the weekend, but light winds. If you're in the sunshine this afternoon, it shouldn't feel too bad. That said though, there will be a fair number of showers breaking out across parts of England and Wales, a few heavy ones in the mix here. And likewise, there'll also be some heavy showers for parts of Northern Ireland, a few for Western Scotland. Elsewhere though, some dry weather, variable amounts of cloud. With light winds though, shouldn't feel too bad, with temperatures in the low to mid-teens for most of us. A little bit cooler though, where we see those showers. Now on through this evening then, those showers will tend to fade away as they pull away towards the southwest of the UK. Likewise, the showers across western parts of Northern Ireland, parts of Western Scotland also fading away. So into the early hours of Wednesday, a lot of dry weather out there, variable amounts of cloud, some low cloud, mistiness, perhaps some sea fog encroaching onto parts of northeast England and the eastern Scotland coast. But elsewhere, though, should be fairly clear. Chilly in places in the countryside, but towns and cities not desperately cold. So it means that for Wednesday morning, some sunshine to start the day, a bit of cloud around here and there. But as we go on through the day, I think quite a bit of sunshine will develop. So a drier day on Wednesday compared to Tuesday. A few showers possible across parts of Wales, the West Midlands. But I say a lot of dry weather around and quite warm as well. Temperatures up a notch on what we'll see today, potentially into the high teens across inland parts of England and Wales. Now, any showers we do see tomorrow evening will tend to fade away fairly quickly, which means to take us into Thursday morning, a fair amount of dry weather. This front out towards the west staying at bay. And that's because it's coming up against this area of high pressure, which will be dominating the weather across far to the north of the UK and across Scandinavia. This area of low pressure then swinging down towards Biscay, which means for the rest of the week we've got this brisk easterly flow across the UK. So quite brisk easterly winds, quite chilly along some eastern coast, but to the west we'll see a bit of sunshine and here the highest temperatures. So a fair amount of cloud for most places, a bit of brightness in the west, temperatures typically in the mid-teens.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, morning all, it's 10:23. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys. I'm Mercy Moroki on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now the hospitality industry is facing a quadruple whammy of a recruitment crisis, rising costs, less revenue and increased tax. Many hospitality businesses were forced to close because of the pressures of the COVID pandemic, of course, and some are now struggling to stay open. That's despite many businesses still looking to hire staff from abroad, claiming that hiring British staff is unaffordable.
Yeah, well, joining us now to talk about this in more detail is Kate Nichols, CEO of UK Hospitality. Kate, thank you very much for joining us. Can you just talk to me a bit about that? Is hiring British staff really pricier, or actually are they just still trying to make the most of cheap foreign labour?
Well, it's not a question of cost, it's a question of availability. What we're facing at the moment across many parts of the country is acute labour shortages, as you've got very low levels of unemployment, very high levels of vacancies across the economy as a whole, not just within hospitality. And we are simply seeing that there is just insufficient staff in parts of the country to be able to recruit. Wages in the sector have been going up by about 11 to 13% over the last 6 months. So it's not a question of not being able to afford staff. It's a question of whether there are staff available to do the jobs that need doing. And at the moment, our businesses are facing a shortfall of about 10% in their staffing. And that means they're having to close for certain days of the week or restrict their hours or occupancy, which is inhibiting their ability to grow and recover.
And what do you think the solution is to all of this? Because if it is such a fundamental sort of availability and staffing shortage, there doesn't seem to be a short-term solution to this necessarily. Do we need to think about some drastic changes, perhaps, that we haven't considered before in order to fix this problem now?
Well, I think you're right. There are long-term challenges that we need to put in place to be able to make sure that we're recruiting and training the next generation of hospitality workers. We've been closed for 2 years, as you said at the start, and that inevitably means that you've got a hiatus in the talent pipeline as catering colleges, apprenticeships are having to be restarted now, and we've got a gap in that recruitment. So we are putting in place the measures that we need to do. But I think what we can do is look again to make sure that the immigration system works as effectively as it can, that we reduce the bureaucracy and the cost as much as possible to make sure that we can get access to those people who want to come in and want to be able to work. And we are playing our part in helping to provide jobs and accommodation for Afghan refugees as well as Ukrainian refugees who are coming in. So that will be part of the solution, and making sure that we can present ourselves at a lower level within schools as an attractive career of choice.
Well, I mean, some hotels have got the dream ticket, haven't they? The Home Office has approached them and offered them thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds a week to house asylum seekers, plus a full refurb at the end of it. I mean, that's fantastic for some hotels, isn't it?
Well, these are areas of the country where you've got a shortfall of visitors versus accommodation. We obviously want to be welcoming back our visitors and our tourists. And the amount of money that is being paid is sort of a cost-price solution to that. But we would much rather be welcoming paying guests and being economically active.
OK, all right, fair enough. And just in terms of how this is going to affect people like me and the money in my pocket. I believe we've lost her, actually. There we go. OK, all right. Well, that was Kate Nichols, who's still with us. Hey, fantastic stuff. There we go. Right. Yes, Kate, all right, just one last quick one then. Yeah, are you concerned maybe that certainly when it comes to things like the food industry, the food area of hospitality, etc., that people are actually just going to start cooking for themselves and eating at home?
Well, that is a big concern at the moment. What we've got is intense pressures in our cost supply chain. We've seen energy bills rising by 150 to 200%. Many restaurants and pubs now paying more for their energy than they do in their rent. We've got food price inflation across the board running at about 15%. But for things like fish and chips, chicken, that's rising at about a third as much again, and oil is double in cost. So we are seeing increasing cost price pressures, and businesses are between a rock and a hard place where they can't put up their prices to be able to cover those costs because, as you rightly say, customers won't be able to afford that with the cost of living squeeze. So it does mean that our businesses are facing a much more intense challenge now than they did at any point during the pandemic, and we are still losing businesses at a rate of just over 2 a day because they can't cope with the cost of living and the cost of business crisis that we're facing at the moment. So we do need to address these to be able to allow businesses to operate as fully as they can so that we can grow not only ourselves out of the recovery that we need, but also the economy as a whole.
Well, thank you so much, Kate Nichols, for speaking to us this morning, CEO of UK Hospitality. It's such a shame what's happening to our hospitality industry, to our pubs and restaurants. As you said, there are 2 businesses closing every single week, not least because of the pandemic, the effects of the pandemic, but it's also because of the other global world events going on, the rising cost of energy.
I don't know. I look, hear me out on this. I'm starting to lose a lot of support and faith and care, frankly, for a lot of these places because, yesterday I decided, all right, I'm going to go and get a drink with my friend, right? And it was, what was it, a single gin and slimline tonic, a single, and 1 small glass of rosé cost me £15.80. I'm just not going to keep going out then. I'm just not going to keep going to.
Yeah, but you do wonder. I mean, of course, they have to make a profit, but I'm sure their margins at some of these places aren't huge. It's a product of everything else, the rising cost of having to get that drink on the customer's table.
I get it, but
the reflection, I think, sometimes of that.
I get it, but I just think some places really aren't helping themselves, They're not helping themselves at all. And I could understand it as well if the quality of service is a lot better in a lot of these places as well. But you're sitting there, you're paying a service charge, you could fire a cannon and not hear a member of staff in some of these venues. And the food ran out. Anyway, I had a bad meal and now I'm angry about it.
Well, the solution, of course, move out of London.
Move out of London, yes, potentially.
But not into Oxford, because that's more expensive. Yes. Move out of London. Honestly, I think that's my favourite thing about not having to live in London, which is that things are much cheaper, and I quite like it.
Yeah, indeed. But I want to know if you're cutting your cloth, right? Are you actually deciding that you're eating out less? Are you, I don't know, have you got into cooking? Are you deciding that you're going to stop drinking so you're not paying for that when you're out and about? Have you given up the old tobacco? Let us know what you're doing to try and compensate for this cost of living crisis, for what's going on in the hospitality sector. But, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow, Wednesday, the 20th of April, we need your help because we are once again handing our show over to you. That's right. We want you to tell us what to talk about, what you think are the most important stories, tell us the subjects that need covering, the questions that need answering, and also who we should be talking to.
Yes, many of you have already got in touch, and we are compiling all of those ideas and questions, so keep them coming in. We'll cover as many as we can. Lots of great topics to discuss already, and you can email us your views or your opinions about what we should be talking about to thepoint@gbnews.uk. So not our usual GB Views email, a separate email, tothepoint@gbnews.uk. That's where you should send all your suggestions about what we should talk about tomorrow.
Yes, time for just 1 or 2 very, very quick views. gbviews@gbnews.uk. I opened up on Meghan and Harry and how I feel as though they're trying to steal the spotlight from our dear Queen. And Susan's been in touch. Thank you, Susan. It's our Queen who needs the love. The parties who want Boris to leave should rise above and not shout from under a stone, saying that Boris is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Manage to combine seamlessly there, Susan, both a dig at Meghan and Harry and standing up for Boris Johnson. That was quite skillfully executed, I think.
Yes, somebody here says that the lady we spoke to, the MP from Ukraine, she's very informative, and she said a separate point, a less serious point, is that the video quality, they're surprised at how good the video quality is, given that some people from the UK can't have as good a video quality. They think they're using Elon Musk's special... And there is a serious point to that, actually, which is that that's what makes this war sort of different in a way, because we are seeing what's going on the ground in such high definition in a way that we haven't before. And that's why it feels, that's one of the reasons it feels so close to home. You know, you speak to people who are on the ground in Ukraine, and I mean, it's exceptional quality, and you almost feel like you're right there with them. And that's what's, I think, for me, has been made this war quite different.
Yeah, OK, fair enough. And a lot of it's on Twitter as well, I suppose. Just lastly, Caroline's been in touch. If Harry and Meghan are on the balcony for the Jubilee, it'll be an insult to the UK. They've called us racist and such a violent country, and that they're afraid to come. I've been a royalist all my life, but if they are there, it would leave a very nasty taste. Don't hold back, Caroline. Keep your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. After the break, we discuss the future of energy markets with GB News' business and economics editor Liam Halligan and energy expert Malcolm Grimston after these headlines.
Good morning, it's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Russian troops have launched a large-scale offensive attacking the entire 300-mile front line on Ukraine's eastern border. President Volodymyr Zelensky says he'll defend all of Ukraine. In an overnight address, he said the battle for the Donbas region has begun. This morning, Russia's defence ministry claims to have struck over 1,200 targets in Ukraine. Vladimir Klitschko, who's the brother of Vitaly, the mayor of Ukraine's capital, says the country will continue to fight Russia.
I am, as everyone in this country, stand together against Russian aggression. And we are ready for everything and anything to defend our country.
President Joe Biden's going to hold a phone call with G7, EU and NATO leaders today to discuss the latest developments in the war and how different nations can hold Moscow to account. Russia has called on Ukraine's main remaining stronghold in Mariupol to leave the Asphalt steel plant and surrender if they want to live. In the UK now, Boris Johnson will face MPs today for the first time since he was fined by police for breaking coronavirus lockdown rules. The Prime Minister is expected to apologise again, but also to urge the Commons to focus on other issues. The opposition insists that Boris Johnson misled Parliament when he said all rules had been followed in Downing Street. Train tickets for this spring are going on sale at a significant discount today. It's being called the Great British Rail Sale. The Transport Secretary says more than 1 million tickets will be up to 50% off this month and the next. It's all part of a bid to help passengers with rising costs of living. You're now up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now, let's head back to The Point.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, right. Morning, everybody. It's 10:37. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki on GB News Live, as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, well, at the moment, MPs are questioning the bosses of some of the UK's biggest energy companies about their pricing and the future of the energy market. So we're just going to listen into that for all.
Hopefully they get an absolute grilling.
Less than it used to be, so that's the first segment to be impacted. For everyone else, the impact is going to be passed through gradually as the direct debits or the bills, catch up with the new tariffs. But I would like to say that I share the concern that Mike has expressed, that when the government intervened at the beginning of February, there was maybe a proportionate at that point in time. But ever since, the situation has worsened considerably with the war in Ukraine and the firmer turmoil in the markets. So we now see bills being higher for longer. So I would expect probably government to reassess the situation in short order to see what's possible.
And do you have any particular numbers? What I'm trying to grasp is you've got so many customers. How many of those customers are struggling to pay their bills, and how worse do you think it's going to get?
We do not have yet any evidence of a significant increase in customers struggling to pay their bills as of today. But just to give you an idea, we have about a little over 3 million households that we supply energy to. Of these, about 15% are on prepayment. So in this case, they've been hit by the increase already. But if you are on prepayment, you have no choice but to pay, because otherwise you run out of electricity. So for the remaining 85% of customers, the majority of them are on direct debit arrangements, which means that it will take a few weeks for this amount of monthly payment to go up. And so at that point is when we expect to see issues. And I don't have any precise modelling number to give you, but I would say that we're certainly concerned as a business that a number of them will struggle to pay, and maybe it's not going to be bad debt necessarily, all of it, but it will certainly be an increase in debt.
Thank you. Mr. O'Shea?
So we have, let me add to my colleagues here, we have just about 10% of our customers who are currently late in payment. So 716,000 customers on average, they're about £440 in debt. That's an increase of 125,000 versus this time last year, and it's about £50 million of extra debt. So in total, there's about £315 million in debt that's outstanding. I think that what we've got to understand is, Mr. Rossi says it is right that prepayment customers have seen the increase already. However, your energy consumption by and large halves during the summer. And so the price has gone up by about 50% and the consumption's gone down by about 50%. We have 1.2 million customers on prepayment meters. So effectively they will be paying slightly more, but not much more. When you get to the 1st of October, their consumption will double, and if the price goes up, that's when we'll see the real impact of this. We've got another 2 million customers who pay on receipt of bills, and again their consumption falls in the summer, whether it's heat because it's warmer or whether it's light because the days are longer. But when you get into winter, we'll see the real effect on prepayment customers in October, and we'll see the real effect on credit customers who pay on receipt of bill probably in December, January time. That's when, so there's still some time to do something with this, but we're seeing an uptick just now, but it will get worse without any further intervention come October, and a lot worse.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hugely concerned for people, massively concerned. And for anyone out there, there's so many people who are going to struggle, really, really struggle with this issue. And we're seeing the start of that with our customers. Last week, we'd set up a new line for people to contact us. We had 8,000 calls last week alone for people coming through on the number with concerns about ability to pay. and that's us just in the first month, the first few weeks. We haven't seen it come through debt numbers yet, so I can't give you an increase in debt. It's too early for that. But a massive concern from people, a huge amount of anxiety from people on the phones about what they're going to do and the concern they face. And a real worry from them. A lot of people for the first time facing this issue, and they've never been in this position before. All we're doing with people just now is to encourage them to talk to us, to speak to us, because that's the way we can help them. And that's what we need people to do, is to keep contacting us. Like Mr O'Shea, my biggest concern is actually when we get to October, particularly around the most vulnerable and the poorest, and that tends to match with the people on a prepayment meter. Because as Mr O'Shea said, actually during the summer their consumption will go down, so their bills will be more manageable. Come October, that's going to get horrific, truly horrific. And it's got to a stage now where I honestly believe the size and scale of this is beyond what I can deal with. It's beyond what I think this industry can deal with. And I think it needs a massive shift, significant shift in the government policy and approach towards this.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Because someone's going to have to stomach the cost of all of this. And it's either consumers, your companies and their shareholders, or the taxpayer. We've had some announcements from the Chancellor. You mentioned the £200 loan that's repaid by customers. We've got the council tax rebates. We've had confirmation of the extension of the warm homes discount. What more needs to be done, and specifically for those prepayment customers, because we know that the delivery of some of these measures is difficult for them. Is there anything that you think the government should do to help them in particular? Sure.
Thank you. My view now is that this has got to a size and scale where I actually think the government should introduce a deficit fund. I'll explain what I mean about that very briefly. I think it's got to a point now where the government in October, for anybody that's deemed to be in fuel poverty or vulnerable, and that will include prepayment meter customers, £1,000 should be taken off their bill and put into a fund. That fund can then be repaid over a 10-year period. Now, you can spread that across the whole consumer base, or government can partially fund it. But I think the problem's got to the size and scale that it requires something significant of that nature, where for those people who are deemed to be in poverty, fuel poverty or vulnerable, need something the size and scale that puts their bill back to where it used to be before the gas crisis. You can then spread that over a 10-year period across the rest of the customer base. And then, to me, that's stage one of moving to a social tariff, which is what I think this country needs to have. And we should implement, when we get a bit more stability and a little bit less volatility in the market, the cap should be changed to be a social tariff, targeted to discount the price to people in poverty. Right now, people on a prepayment meter pay more, and that is perverse. And a social tariff should be brought in to discount the price for people in fuel poverty and people in a prepayment, and the cost of that should be borne by those who can afford to pay.
Anybody disagree with Mr Anderson's?
Right, OK, there we go. Well, various different CEOs of various different energy companies. The last one that you heard there was Keith Anderson of Scottish Power being grilled, I suppose, not necessarily grilled. I thought it was relatively tentative questioning from what we could hear there about the crisis within the industry. And what they're saying is that come October, December, January, what they're going to see is people essentially not being able to pay their bills. And you heard it there as well. The burden on this then is going to fall on either consumers, on the companies and their shareholders, or the taxpayer. I've got a feeling, don't you, that it's not going to be companies and the shareholder.
Absolutely. He mentioned the CEO of Scottish Power, I think it was.
Keith Anderson, yeah.
Keith Anderson, he mentioned there that the government's going to have to do something. I think he said he thinks the government should give a grant to families facing fuel poverty. I mean, these companies do make hundreds of millions, if not billions, in profit. So I'm not sure why he thinks the taxpayer should be footing that bill, but that's because he's, of course, beholden to his shareholders, isn't he? But look, let's turn to energy expert Malcolm Grimston, who joins us now for his thoughts. Malcolm, I don't know if you caught that Select Committee meeting there. What did you make of some of the comments coming out of those energy bosses?
Yeah, I did, and I thought it was actually a very realistic and and encouraging discussion there. I mean, I would actually say I think it wouldn't help anybody if we got into a position of viewing the energy industry as the bad guys as such. We should bear in mind that over 30 energy companies have gone bankrupt over the course of the last year. A lot of them are being caught up in this dreadful situation that's affecting all of us. And for the big companies, the ones that at the moment are making the money, this is only part of the story over the last 10 or 20 years. There have been long periods when those companies were not making a rate of return that they would if their investors had put money into supermarkets or something of that nature. And as a result, they weren't investing. And part of the problem we're in at the moment is that there hasn't been enough investment in energy over the course of the last 20 years to give us the robustness to deal against this dreadful whole array of issues that have hit us pretty much all at the same time over the last year. So the industry is right. I don't think you can put a windfall tax on the industry if you want. And the 1997 Labour government, new Tony Blair government did that. Within 5 years, the electricity supply industry in the UK was bust, and the investors, particularly the Americans, sold up and went home, and that has added to the crisis today. But in any case, that's not going to answer the whole of the question. We've got the slight breathing space of the summer, as the executives were saying. But next October, we're expecting the price cap to go up very significantly again, just at the time that we start really using energy far more significantly. And we have to get in a position that we're ready for that, and that those who struggle most with their bills will not face the most dreadful consequences.
Yeah, I mean, but in reality, it's all very well and good sitting here, but for want of a better phrase, it's all hot air, isn't it? Because we haven't got a coherent strategy of what to do. I mean, we were told there by someone who's probably a multi-millionaire who's running a £1 billion business and the like, that actually maybe the taxpayer should fund £1,000 per person who can't pay. I mean, I'm sorry, but it sticks in the craw a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, but from time to time, energy prices go up. In fact, like any industry, they have to go up because that's the signal to invest in the next round of equipment, which is going to bring those prices down again. And this is an unprecedented situation. Even before Ukraine, we were had discussions with yourselves and others about this, as to how many issues had all hit at the same time. And now, of course, we have the added political requirement to get ourselves off dependence on Russian oil and gas as rapidly as we can. That's an enormous cost, and it's simply a statement of fact to say it either has to come from the industry, and some of it is already coming from the industry. As I say, 30 companies gone bust as a result of this crisis. Some of it will come from the consumer at higher prices. But if we're going to protect those who can't afford higher prices, can't afford their electricity bills today, then inevitably, as taxpayers, we're going to have to step in. I'm very fortunate. I can afford my energy bills. For me, I don't see why I shouldn't pay my fair share and my bills should go up.
Well, you can pay mine as well, mate. I'll tell you what, I'll give you that much. Energy expert there, Malcolm Grimston, who joins us just there. And I'm going to go over to Liam Halligan now. Thank you very much, Liam, for joining us in the studio. I'm not sure how much I buy that. I do want someone to blame for all of this. Right, and I think, this relentless push for net zero, the idiocy of relying on Russia for things like oil and gas, etc., etc. To what extent have our political leaders put us in this situation now, rising costs?
I think there's been huge lack of urgency about energy policy for at least 2 decades. It dates back a long time. We've demonised nuclear power, and actually it's one of the safest forms of power. The French get 70% of their energy from nuclear power. They're not suffering with the same wholesale energy prices that we're suffering from. Successive governments have failed to ensure there's enough gas storage. Ridiculously, the British government allowed the decommissioning of the Rough gas storage facility off the Yorkshire coast. That's meant we've outsourced a lot of our gas storage to the Netherlands and to Germany, which, of course, undermines our own energy security. We're heavily reliant on Norwegian gas, actually, more than Russian gas, but it's still, albeit friendly foreign power, but foreign power. And I think there's a lot of confusion has seeped into the debate just this morning during this Select Committee hearing, and it's confusion that I think some of the industry wants. No one's saying, or they shouldn't be saying, to put a windfall tax on the kind of companies that are in front of the Business and Energy and Industry Select Committee this morning. E.ON, Centrica, Scottish Power. These are utility companies, right? These companies, you've got to be very clear about this. These companies buy energy off the wholesale markets and then they sell it to us, right?
Yeah.
They distribute it and sell it to us. The proposal is for a windfall tax on the oil and gas majors, the people who actually pump the energy, right? Who get the energy out of the ground.
Right.
Shell, BP, these major international energy conglomerates. They're not the people that sell us the energy. They may sell us petrol and diesel on the forecourt, but they're not selling us electricity in our homes. And no one's saying a windfall tax should be on the household energy companies. The windfall tax, if it's going to happen, is proposed on the oil and gas majors.
Can I just ask, those are sort of macro level issues, I suppose, and people are going to be concerned about the micro problems, the fact that there is a very real prospect. They might not be able to pay their energy bills, whether it's next month or the month after. That's going to be a position lots of people are in. Why is the government or these companies not coming out and saying, look, we understand what everybody's going through. If you happen to not pay your energy bills, we will be more lenient. We will give you more leeway, because there's going to be lots of people at home feeling like they might end up in court or might end up with the bailiffs coming round if they don't pay. Why are we not hearing that side of things?
Well, I've been writing and broadcasting for months about the prospect of mass non-payment. I think it will happen. And I do think it's important to delineate between the people we're hearing from this morning in the House of Commons and the oil majors. The oil majors want us to try and attack the people in the Commons, right? Now, the people in the Commons have done bad things in the sense that they haven't brought energy forward, right? When energy was cheap, they just relied on that energy rather than buying their energy on forward markets. It starts to get complex here. So I don't think the energy companies we're hearing from in the House of Commons have got the scope to provide money for a windfall tax. That's why they're saying that taxpayers should bail out other taxpayers. In the end, I think what you're going to see this coming autumn is another increase in the energy fuel cap. I do think prices will go up again because wholesale prices have gone up 6 times since last August, not least due to the war in Ukraine. But what Malcolm Grimston said, which was absolutely correct, is these prices were elevated before Putin invaded Ukraine, though, of course, that invasion has made things a lot worse. In the end, this is a very big political conundrum, and politicians are going to have to try and, distribute the pain. And a lot of the pain is going to fall on ordinary households, but at least some of the pain, I think, will eventually fall on the big oil and gas companies, given their massive profits.
Good stuff, Liam. Thank you very much. Of course, Liam Halligan, now Business and Economics Editor, will be joining us later as well for On the Money. Classic stuff. Right. And look, I can see, actually, if these prices keep going up around winter, I mean, people are going to be going out into their garden and sourcing a wood pigeon for Christmas dinner, aren't they, instead of going out and getting the turkey? I mean, goodness gracious me. But anyway, right, we're going to give you a look through now some of the headlines that you might have missed, all right? So things that maybe slipped under your radar. And a tax tribunal has ruled, get this, that flapjacks are subject to a VAT tax, as they do not qualify as cake. Cakes, of course, are 0 rated for VAT purposes. I mean, this is bad news.
This is the Jaffa cake thing, isn't it? This is Jaffa cake argument. Is it a cake? Is it a biscuit? They make it a cake to not have to pay that. Anyway, following a taste test, Judge...
It's not a biscuit, it's a cake.
Judge Christopher Staker did very important taste tests, and Carolyn Small concluded that the flapjack should be considered a sweet instead of a cake, as it does not have the right shape, texture and macronutrients to be considered a cake, being too rectangular, too dense.
Too rectangular? Just cut it into a different shape. Yeah, it doesn't have to be rectangular. You can make any...
Very odd stuff. Under scrutiny, the judges also insisted that the flapjack would, quote, look wholly out of place as a dessert at the end of a meal, and therefore could not be considered a cake. Important.
Well, that's ridiculous, because hang on, people regularly have cheese for dessert at the end of a meal. Why would a flapjack look out of place when it comes to that?
It just depends what you have with. If you had a flapjack, I can see it with a bit of ice cream on the side, a bit of chocolate drizzle.
Sprinkle a bit of cinnamon over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I just drifted off there for a moment. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that would be... I definitely think that's an outrage, frankly. It's a scandal and something that possibly should have been on the front.
Don't ever say we don't talk about the
massive issues here. Now, this is good. Snowdonia's National Park Authority has urged hill walkers to please please use the toilet before setting off on a walk. Now, they've received many reports of human faeces being left behind on paths, trails and even the railway tracks across Wales' most famous mountain.
Yes, well, the authorities' engagement officer called such reports, quote, upsetting and alarming, with a Snowdon guide adding it was embarrassing to have to warn people to mind the poo whilst hiking across such picturesque scenery. And I agree with... I mean, come on, you can't, surely.
Sometimes you get caught short.
Yeah, but you have to plan ahead and bring something suitable. Or use a doggy... I mean, you know, it's who wants
what I don't like, right, is what's something that dog walkers do, and there'll be people watching this now who do this all the time, right? And you need to give your head a wobble. So their dog defecates, OK? And they pick it up in their plastic bag, so we're on to a winner already. You're not a poo lever. You've picked it up in your plastic bag, and then you tie a little bow in it, and then you hang it on a tree, right?
Really?
As if to say to people, don't worry, I'll come back for that. Well, we know you don't come back for that.
I've not seen dog poo hang
honestly,
from a tree.
Have you not seen... Seriously, poo
where...
tree is a thing around going to... Oh, hang it on the tree. Oh, we'll come back this way. No, you won't, Sandra. You never come back this way. You've got a week's supply of dog poo on that tree now. It looks
I don't know where you...
David Attenborough's about to turn up.
I don't know where you
well,
live,
now,
I've not seen
on
that.
the left, we can see it's the season for the poo tree. Anyway, right, OK, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Keep these views coming in, people. Loads to get stuck into. That's 1 hour down. We've got one to go very, very shortly. Stay tuned after the break, all right?
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Moroki on your TV, radio and online. Loads to get stuck into today. We're asking Rwanda what's in it for them with this latest asylum deal. And as well, we're going to be getting your views, whether or not you think Boris Johnson can bounce back. Does he need to? Should we all just move on from this Partygate nonsense?
Yes, and those views can come into gbviews at gbnews.uk, our usual email, and we'll get to as many as we can throughout the next hour. But first, let's give you the latest headlines.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. Russian troops have launched a large-scale offensive attacking the entire 300-mile front line on Ukraine's eastern border. Well, the President, Volodymyr Zelensky, says he will defend all of Ukraine. In an overnight address, he said the battle for the Donbas region has begun. This morning, Russia's defence ministry claims to have struck over 1,200 targets in the country. Ukraine's military says Moscow have sent further weapons and military equipment over the border.
The enemy is trying to continue offensive operations in the Eastern Operational Zone in order to establish full control over the territory of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, as well as to maintain a land corridor with the temporarily occupied Crimea. Missile and airstrikes on civilian targets throughout Ukraine do not stop.
Earlier, we spoke to Vladimir Klitschko on GB News. He's the brother of the mayor of Ukraine's capital, who told us the country will continue to fight Russia.
There's no option. It's about death and life. It's about defending and standing for your home, for your families here and against this aggression. And you know what? We need to stop Russia in Ukraine. We need partners. We need support of our allies. We need to stop this Russian aggression, Russian war and criminal war in Ukraine now.
Meanwhile, fighting continues for control of the besieged port city of Mariupol. Russia's defense ministry says it's issued an ultimatum to the final stronghold of Ukrainian soldiers who are defending the Azovstal steel plant. The Kremlin says Ukraine's forces must leave the plant and surrender or die. President Joe Biden's going to hold a phone call with G7, EU and NATO leaders today. They're discussing the latest developments in the war and also how different nations can hold Moscow to account. In some UK news now. Boris Johnson's going to face MPs today for the first time since he was fined by police for breaking coronavirus lockdown rules. The Prime Minister is expected to apologise again, but also to urge the Commons to focus on other issues. Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis says the Prime Minister's fine is similar to former ministers receiving speeding fines. Opposition parties, though, insist Boris Johnson misled Parliament when he said all rules had been followed in Downing Street. Chris Curtis is from Opinion Research and he told GB News another apology from the Prime Minister won't be enough to restore his reputation.
Obviously the best card he's got at the moment, but I think he's going to need to rebuild his reputation and the Conservative Party's reputation on some of those other issues if he wants to sort of stand a chance at holding on to the top job and winning the next general election whenever it comes.
Ministers have been told to order civil servants working from home to go back to the office. Jacob Rees-Mogg is the Minister for Government Efficiency and he's written to Cabinet members saying they need to send a clear message to civil servants to bring about a rapid return to face-to-face work. The Daily Telegraph is reporting that in some government departments, up to 3/4 of staff are still working from home. Former boxing world champion Amir Khan says he was robbed at gunpoint by two men whilst out with his wife in London last night. The 35-year-old tweeted explaining that his watch was taken off him in East London. He added that he and his wife were both unharmed. Scotland Yard have said that an investigation has begun and police are following a number of inquiries. Train tickets for this spring are going on sale at a significant discount today. It's being called the Great British Rail Sale. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, says more than 1 million off-peak tickets will be up to 50% off this month and next. The sale is thought to be the first of its kind, and it's part of a bid to help passengers with rising costs of living and encourage people to take the train. The United States will no longer enforce its COVID mask mandate on public transport. A federal judge in Florida had ruled that the directive was unlawful. That then overturned a key White House policy that had been put in place to reduce the spread of the infection. US health officials had only extended the rule last week that aimed to ensure travellers wore masks on planes, trains and in taxis. Women who are overweight are at a higher risk of developing womb cancer. It's according to a new study, and researchers from the University of Bristol looked at genetic samples from 120,000 women in 7 countries. That included the UK. Well, they found that for every 5 extra body mass index units that a woman put on, that increased the risk of developing womb cancer by 88%. You're up to date now on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's return to Patrick and Mercy.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for you over the next hour, so here's what's on the menu.
OK, people. Now, the government plans to deal with Rwandan, to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, I should say, where they're going to be protests, continue to dominate the headlines. But why would Rwanda just agree to take in our asylum seekers? We'll be asking an Africa expert what's actually in it for Rwanda.
Yes, and Prime Minister Boris Johnson will face the House of Commons for the first time since being fined by the Metropolitan Police over breaking lockdown rules. Well, should he actually apologise? What do you think? What do you think he should say? Get in touch and let us know.
Yes, indeed. I don't think he really should, but anyway, there we are. We have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme, plus a very, very special dispatch from Sweden. We're going to be having a look, delving into some of their social issues there, but there we go. GB Views at gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on Prince Harry's virtue signalling.
Prince Harry has, of course, made his first trip to Europe since no longer being a working member of the royal family to visit the Invictus Games at The Hague. He's finally emerged from his £11 million bunker where he, in my opinion, has been burying his head under the sand, the warm Californian sand on those Santa Barbara beaches. Now, let me make something clear before I say all this. I couldn't care less how extravagant people are with their own money. In fact, I believe all of that at the philosophical level. It's not anybody's place, including mine, to tell two adults how much money they're allowed to make and how they should spend it. In fact, I encourage people to build their own wealth, make their own way in life if they can. I don't care how many millions or billions anyone has in the bank, as long as they're not harming anyone. So to make it clear, I'm in favour of Prince Harry and Meghan earning their own money. But what I do care about is not being lectured about my morals, my personal life decisions, by out-of-touch, holier-than-thou spoilt brats who took a flight to La La Land on a private jet once and seemed to have never made the return to reality. And that's how I'm left feeling, yet again, by remarks made by Prince Harry, this time in his appearance at the Invictus Games. Speaking to a group of 12 and 11-year-olds, the Duke of Sussex said this: "It's not going to be easy, but I will never, ever, ever rest until I have, as a parent, at least tried to make the world a better place for my children, because it's our responsibility that the world is the way it is now." Sorry, what? A better place for your children? They're literally, on just about every objective measure, some of the most fortunate children to have ever graced the earth. They will never have to face the hardships, the trials, the toil, sweat and tears that normal children in the real world have to face. Have some perspective. Read the room for once, Harry. I can't be the only one who thinks this is all a bit self-indulgent. I can't be the only one who was left a bit nauseous after Harry started going on about worrying about passing genetic pain and suffering to his children. And then there's this part. This part exceptionally irks me. Prince Harry said, and I quote, "I don't think that we should be bringing children into the world unless we're going to make that commitment to make it better for them. We cannot steal their future." How utterly sanctimonious do you have to be? How consumed by your own self-righteousness that you think you can tell people if they should or shouldn't have a family? Most families want a family simply because they want a family. They want to live a relatively quiet, normal life, and for most working families, that is actually quite an uphill struggle. People have children because it's fundamentally instinctive, because they fall in love, because they want a family of their own, full stop. Most people's primary concern is just putting food on the table, keeping the lights on and the house warm. Most people struggle to just get by. This idea that if you're not prepared to go on some kind of altruistic, selfless journey to make the world a better place, then you shouldn't have children. Well, that's just exactly the kind of spiel people who have more money than they know what to do with come out with, who sit in their ivory towers in unimaginable luxury without a clue what life is like for regular people. You know, I think most people would actually quite like the luxury of having the time and headspace to think up this kind of garbage that Prince Harry comes out with. Wouldn't it be lovely if, instead of worrying about how you'll pay your next energy bill, you worried about how we can move towards a greener world where we're at one with nature? Wouldn't it be nice if, instead of worrying about keeping your children safe from the criminals in your neighbourhood, you had the energy to commit to making the world a peaceful, happy place for the global community of humankind? That would be nice indeed. Look, my advice is this. It's probably best to stop taking anything Prince Harry says seriously anymore. That is, if you are one of the few who still are. The man has absolutely nothing to say that is of use to ordinary people. Rant over.
Yeah, it just just make my stomach churn when the likes of Prince Harry say they want to make the world a better place. I mean, who do you think he is to make the world a better place? His idea of making the world a better place is to go and play a charity polo match and get a private jet back to his multi-million-pound mansion, is it?
Yeah, and also this idea that who's he to tell people you shouldn't have children here? Well, if you're not going to be an eco-friendly, you know, an eco-warrior, if you're not going to fight to make the world a better place, then you're basically what he's saying is you're effectively not fit to have children. Well, who made him, you know, judge, jury and executioner? He seems to think he's morally superior to everybody else. He seems to think he has some kind of unique window into what life is really like.
Exactly.
And he has some unique window into truth that the rest of us don't seem to have, because he keeps on banging on and banging on about how everybody else should live his life. And it's often quite hypocritical, actually. And I'm sick of him. You know, I'm happy for him to stay in the limelight. I'm happy for him to do his Netflix deals and his Spotify deals and whatever, and earn as much money as he can. But what I'm not going to take is him lecturing ordinary people over and over again about how they should live their life.
No, exactly. I mean, this is one of the most privileged trust fund babies that we're seeing having an epic tantrum on the world stage, and frankly I think it's just crawled back into Oprah's bosom. But anyway, since the government unveiled its new immigration plan to send single male channel crossers to Rwanda, they've faced a barrage of criticism from opposition leaders, charity bosses and even the leader of the Church of England. Now, one man from Eritrea told The Guardian that he would rather take his own life than go to Rwanda. And another saying, Rwanda is like Eritrea, it does not keep human beings safe.
Well, yeah, they would say that in The Guardian, I suppose, wouldn't they? But a major part of the plan rests on the asylum seekers choosing to stay and settle in Rwanda rather than the UK. But what kind of life actually awaits for them in Rwanda? And what does the country stand to actually benefit from the deal? Well, here to help us answer those exact questions is Dr. Jonathan Beloff, a researcher on the African Great Lakes region and a visiting research fellow at King's College, London. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Look, I have to ask you, what is life in Rwanda like? Because what I've found quite amusing is people who probably couldn't put the place on a map, they couldn't pin Rwanda down on a map, suddenly thinking they're experts on the quality of life that faces people when they get to Rwanda. So I'd like to hear what you think that quality of life is.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on your show. I've been going to Rwanda actually since 2008. I was recently there in 2019. And residing in Rwanda, it doesn't follow really any of the extremes that are being discussed. It is in this, especially Kigali and the area where these refugees and migrants are being placed, is better comparable where they are coming from. But once again, this wasn't their intended location. They were coming to the United Kingdom.
Yes, no, exactly. And, well, I get all of that. That's fair enough. But, I mean, they were also coming to the United Kingdom illegally in a lot of senses, weren't they? Now, I spoke last week with a gentleman who's a journalist in Rwanda. So he lives in Rwanda. He's from Rwanda. He finds it very offensive what the likes of many people apparently on the left of this country are saying about his country. He was of the opinion anyway that a lot of people in Rwanda have direct first-hand experience of what it's like to be a refugee or to have to leave one's home country and then maybe return back one day. He also says the accommodation there for them, some Rwandans, the only thing that's annoying some Rwandans is that the accommodation for some of the asylum seekers might be better than the accommodation for, domestic Rwandans, as it were. Do you buy into that?
There is a lot of truth in that. One of the big, experiences that most Rwandans have had, or at least have known someone, usually within the family, is of being a refugee. Starting in 1959, all the way until even quite now, there are still some Rwandans who are refugees in the DRC, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is an after effect of the '94 genocide against the Tutsis. So for a lot of Rwandans, they have a very favorable view towards, refugees and migrants because they suffered horrific hardships when a lot were refugees in neighboring countries. And there are, every time Rwanda has held refugees within its borders, especially over the last 20 years, 15 years in particular, with refugees from Burundi. I believe there are 60,000 Burundians still in Rwanda. There are thousands. I've Just in 2013-14, there was over 100,000 Congolese refugees in Rwanda, where there is attention towards them, towards their needs, and towards rehabilitation, whether for them returning to their country or for them to try to make a life in Rwanda. So in times past, and I wouldn't be surprised now, based off what colleagues telling me, Rwandans are telling me about the standard of living, comparing it to their own standard of living, but that becomes somewhat second nature because of historical experiences, the identity factor that this is promoting, we are helping others, especially because we have this history of abandonment, whether during the genocide or before. And that they do see the overall foreign policy advantages that are part of this deal.
Yeah, I've found there's been quite a lot of hypocrisy. People change, have a short memory sometimes when it serves their own agenda. I'm looking at an article here from about a year ago, exactly a year ago, and it's from the UNHCR, the UN's refugee body, and it's saying that the UN High Commissioner for Refugees was praising Rwanda just a year ago for offering life-saving haven to refugees, for refugees. This is a UN article. And then suddenly people are acting like the UN has been for ages sort of wholeheartedly condemning Rwanda, and they think it's abhorrent that refugees are being sent to Rwanda, when the reality is they have a history of resettling refugees, which has been commended, not least by the UN itself in the past.
Very true. Rwanda's relationship with the United Nations and its multiple organizations within it, agencies, is a complex history because of the failures of those agencies before 1994, and especially during the genocide against the Tutsis in 94. But the UN is very critical of Rwanda because of accusations of domestic human rights abuses, specifically Rwanda's interference or engagements with neighboring Congo, with the Congo Wars, and how the UN still, in the UN Group of Experts reports, still accuses Rwanda and Uganda of interference in Eastern Congo.
Good stuff. Well, look, thank you. Fascinating to talk to you, actually. You'll have to come back on the show. Dr. Jonathan Beloff there, researcher on the African Great Lakes region and a visiting research fellow at King's College London. Just giving you a bit of the inside info, actually, on what Rwanda is actually like. I'm a bit sick and tired, I don't know about you, of people patronising it. I think it exposes a lot of prejudice and, dare I say it, a lot of their own unconscious bias and racism.
Yeah,
as well.
I wonder, I've been thinking about this quite a lot over the last few days, trying to decide what I actually think about this policy. Do you think it would make a difference if it was a country that is looked upon more favourably? So, I don't know, South Africa, or what difference do you think it would make?
You could argue South Africa's more dangerous, I think, than Rwanda.
What do you think it would make, the difference, though? Do you think people have an issue with Rwanda because it's seen as some backward country?
I think the vast majority of people who are opposed to this don't believe in borders and would happily throw this country open to every single, quote, refugee or asylum seeker, regardless of whether or not they came here legally. So Boris Johnson could come up with any scheme whatsoever and they would decide that they didn't like it. But, right, hopefully, ladies and gents, we've got a big couple of sections coming your way, actually. We're going to have a big debate. Parliament is back. Boris is going to be making, apparently, a grovelling apology later. Should Boris have to apologise or not? We're going to be debating on that. And in the controversy as well, we've seen massive numbers of non-EU migrants coming in to this country. So we're going to be doing the controversy on that after the break.
Hello there, I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. And after what wasn't a bad weekend for most places, some sunny spells to start the new week. Showers too, more so than over the weekend, but light winds. If you're in the sunshine this afternoon, it shouldn't feel too bad. That said, though, there will be a fair number of showers breaking out across parts of England and Wales, a few heavy ones in the mix here. And likewise, there'll also be some heavy showers for parts of Northern Ireland, a few for Western Scotland. Elsewhere, though, some dry weather, variable amounts of cloud. With light winds, though, shouldn't feel too bad, with temperatures in the low to mid-teens for most of us. A little bit cooler, though, where we see those showers. Now on through this evening, then, those showers will tend to fade away as they pull away towards the southwest of the UK. Likewise, the showers across western parts of Northern Ireland, parts of Western Scotland also fading away. So into the early hours of Wednesday, a lot of dry weather out there, variable amounts of cloud, some low cloud mistness, perhaps some sea fog encroaching onto parts of northeast England and the eastern Scotland coast. But elsewhere, though, should be fairly clear. Chilly in places in the countryside, but towns and cities not desperately cold. So it means that for Wednesday morning, some sunshine to start the day, a bit of cloud around here and there. But as we go on through the day, I think quite a bit of sunshine will develop. So a drier day on Wednesday compared to Tuesday. A few showers possible across parts of Wales, the West Midlands. But I say a lot of dry weather around and quite warm as well. Temperatures up a notch on what we'll see today, potentially into the high teens across inland parts of England and Wales. Now, any showers we do see tomorrow evening will tend to fade away fairly quickly, which means to take us into Thursday morning, a fair amount of dry weather. This front out towards the west staying at bay. And that's because it's coming up against this area of high pressure, which will be dominating the weather across far to the north of the UK and across Scandinavia. This area of low pressure then swinging down towards Biscay, which means for the rest of the week we've got this brisk easterly flow across the UK. So quite brisk easterly winds, quite chilly along some eastern coasts, but to the west we'll see a bit of sunshine and here the highest temperatures. So a fair amount of cloud for most places, a bit of brightness in the west, temperatures typically in the mid-teens.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
A very good morning to you. It's 11:25 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christys, live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
OK, all right. Well, the Prime Minister will face the House of Commons in his first address since being fined by the Metropolitan Police over the breaking of lockdown rules. Now, the address comes on the 1,000th day of his premiership as MPs return to Parliament after an 18-day recess.
Yes, well, the Prime Minister is expected to offer an apology, apologise wholeheartedly, in fact, while also emphasising the need to move on and focus on issues like the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, this just sounds like, one of the classic kind of apologies that you might give to your missus. It's like, right, look, OK, I'm very sorry that I came home and I was plastered. I spent far too long at the pub, but I think it's important that we move on from this now, OK? Anyway, meanwhile, opposition MPs will attempt to force a vote as early as tomorrow, which could decide if an investigation is held into whether or not Boris Johnson misled Parliament. Do any of you still care about this? GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, and all this comes ahead of local elections on May the 5th. Be with you.
Oh, it's May the 4th, but anyway, yeah, fair enough.
The results of which could provide a measure of how much Partygate has damaged the Prime Minister's...
Oh, it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking.
Can you tell I'm not a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, massively. Right, OK, so we've got Stephen Pound on now, former Labour MP for Ealing North. Thank you very much, absolutely, for coming on the show. Great to have you on the show. Right. Do you think Boris Johnson should go? Because I put it to you, Mr. Pound, that if you do, you're out of touch with the vast majority of the nation.
Listen, not only should he go, but he will go. There's no question at all about that. You know and I know that he's a dead man walking. And it's not just one thing or two things. It's the accumulation, the drip of this. Look, the reality is that to the leader of the party, and, I've been here. I was there before 97 when we knew that the Tories were doomed. I was there in 2008 when we sat around waiting for the Etonians. We knew that we were doomed. What's happening here, the two things that really matter are confidence and the calendar. The calendar, as Mercy rightly said, May the 5th. We've also got two very, very edgy by-elections coming up in Wakefield, where the resigned now Tory MP was clearly a wrong un, and it's going to be very difficult to actually say, vote Conservative in Wakefield, and obviously Leicester East. But look, the other thing is confidence. Politicians, by and large, are fairly self-centred and egomaniacal, and I speak as one who has been one for many, many years. Look, if they think that their seats are at risk, they will chuck him overboard. He will sink like the Moskva. He will be gone. And that's the absolute reality of it. On the doorstep, what I'm getting over and over again is people saying, of course I'm a Conservative, but Boris Johnson's not a Conservative. How can I vote for him? I don't think they're moving straight across to the Labour Party, despite my earnest imprecations.
But this is, hang on a second.
On the doorstep. I think they might actually float across and waste their vote on the Liberals. But Johnson is finished.
This is straight out of the Labour Party propaganda book, isn't it? Come on, if Boris Johnson has to go, then Keir Starmer has to go for drinking a beer when he shouldn't have been. Nicola Sturgeon has to go for a hat-trick of mask mandate fails. Mark Drakeford has to go for dancing during Diwali. Do you want to just watch the world burn?
Sorry. Dancing during Diwali is not an executing crime, I have to say. Look, that's just nonsense. There is no comparison. What you're talking about
but apparently, hang on a second, but apparently a bit of cake on your birthday is
a tsunami of lies.
Yeah, but hang on. So dancing during Diwali in a crowd full of people, maskless, relentlessly doing it is not a goable offence. But actually, looking at some cake on your birthday in the place that you work is.
Patrick, you know and I know that all this Partygate stuff comes from Watergate, and we know that Watergate, it wasn't the crime, it was the cover-up. It was the denial and it was the lies. In many cases, this is inconsequential. Glugging a bottle of booze in a constituency office is no big deal. I don't know about dancing in the Diwali party. I know Mark Drakeford, and I don't actually see him as cutting a rug and, doing the light fantastic at Diwali. But what it is with Boris Johnson, and there's a pattern of this in every job he's ever had, it's the same consistent pattern. He is unreliable, he's untrustworthy, and he simply is a person who has at best, a nodding acquaintance with the truth. It's the cover-up that matters, not being ambushed by a cake.
So, I mean, if you think that about Boris Johnson, and if you think that, his behaviour that he's displayed whilst he's been Prime Minister predates him being Prime Minister, I mean, what are you saying then about the millions of people? I think it was something like 14 million people who voted for the man only a couple of years ago. He got the biggest majority they had got in a long time, 80-seat majority. People vote for him. People like him.
Yep.
Labour like to say the man's a liar, the man's this and that, but it doesn't cut through clearly because it didn't work at the last general election, and it probably won't work at the next general election.
Well, can I just say it's not just Labour that's saying this, it's Tory MPs that are saying this. Quite respected Tory MPs are saying this. Look, at the last time, Boris Johnson got the best vote since God knows when. Labour got the worst vote since 1935. You've got to realise that parties don't just win elections, the other parties lose them. We didn't have the most charismatic and sort of far-reaching leader of the Labour Party back in 2019. So you've got to put that in there. But look, the thing about the character of the personality is that we now know a lot about Boris's character. We know this from his wives. We know the fact he doesn't know how many children he's got. We know the fact that he is occasionally guilty of terminological inexactitude, as we used to say on the floor of the House. His character simply doesn't stand up to scrutiny. And to say that we can't actually change horses in midstream when we did the same thing in the First War, when we got rid of, of Chamberlain in the Second War and elected Churchill, to say that because of Ukraine, we can't do anything, is a nonsense. This country deserves better. It needs better. I'm not, a loyalist for the Labour Party. I've, voted against the Labour Party God knows how many times. But what I do know that sometimes the country is more important than the party. And when you have the leader of the Conservative Party, the leader of our country, coming up with an idea like this Rwanda thing, which is both risible and repulsive and is not going to work, and we all know it's not going to work, and he's just thrown another dead cat on the table to try to actually distract attention. He is finished, he is gone, and we all know that the leader of the next time, it will not be him leading the Conservative Party. It will be one of three people, and for the sake of the country, I know which one I would prefer.
Fair enough. Just very quickly then, what was it again that Keir Starmer's policy was to help out with this asylum crisis?
With which crisis?
The asylum seeker crisis. What was it that Keir Starmer suggested?
Work with our European neighbours. Stop turning our back on Europe. Look at ID cards once and for all. We could bring in ID cards tomorrow.
What does that mean in practice? What does work with our European neighbours?
You don't want to work with us, Patrick, but believe you me, ID cards are the best single thing we could do to stop the flow of illegal immigration into this country.
ID cards is your solution to stopping illegal...
No, it's part of it. It's part of the architecture. Look, if we're going to actually do something about this, we have to stop saying that we don't want anything to do with Europe. We have to work with Europe. How on earth can we say, on the one hand, that we want to leave Europe and we start making all these lazy tropes about the French and the Germans and everything, and on the other hand, expect to work with them? This is a pan-European problem. We have to work as Europe. Internally, by all means, let's go for ID cards. And if we're going to talk about offshoring, in all honesty, can we honestly really say that we're going to send people to Rwanda, process them, and in some cases bring them back? Because of course we're not. What we're going to do is actually transport people. We're back to flipping Botany Bay in the 1860s, and it makes you flipping well ashamed to be British.
Oh, well, I think a lot of people on the left are ashamed to be British all the time anyway. But Stephen Pound, thank you very much.
No.
I've enjoyed this. I must say, look, I'm getting shouted at. I'm sorry, Stephen. You know, you're very well thought of here. We disagree, but it's great to have the back and forth, and we love to see it. Stephen Pound, there, Labour MP, always puts up his side of the case.
This analogy with slavery is getting very tired, isn't it? It's clearly not... not slavery, the transportation of
I know what you mean.
transatlantic slave trade style thing. It is a choice ultimately between France and Rwanda. So it's not that difficult, I would suggest, if you really do want to stay in a safe European country, to choose between France and Rwanda. That, I think, is the bottom line.
Absolutely. All right, OK, well, look, we've rattled through all of that. Loads more still to come, but first it's time for a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 11:34. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. Russian troops have launched a large-scale offensive, attacking the entire 300-mile front line on Ukraine's eastern border. Well, the President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will defend all of Ukraine. In an overnight address, he said the battle for the Donbas region has begun. This morning, Russia's defence minister said Moscow is starting a new phase of its operation. Well, Vladimir Klitschko is the brother of Vitaly, the mayor of Ukraine's capital. He spoke to us earlier and said the country will continue to fight Russia.
I am, as everyone in this country, stand together against Russian aggression. And we are ready for everything and anything to defend our country.
Meanwhile, fighting continues for control of the besieged port city of Mariupol. Russia's defence ministry says it's issued an ultimatum to the final stronghold of Ukrainian soldiers who are defending the Avstal steel plant. The Kremlin says Ukraine's forces must leave the plant and surrender or die. In other news now, Boris Johnson will face MPs today for the first time since he was fined by police for breaking coronavirus lockdown rules. The Prime Minister is expected to apologise again, but also to urge the Commons to focus on other issues. Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis says the Prime Minister's fine is similar to former ministers receiving speeding fines. Opposition parties, though, insist Boris Johnson misled Parliament when he said all rules had been followed in Downing Street. Train tickets for this spring are going on sale at a significant discount today. It's being called the Great British Rail Sale. The Transport Secretary says more than 1 million off-peak tickets will be up to 50% off this month and next. It's all part of a bid to help passengers with rising costs of living. You're up to date. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. Shortly, we'll be back to Patrick and Mercy.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Gosh, morning everyone. Yes, we've rattled through today, haven't we? 11:38 already. It's me, Patrick Christys. I'm Mercy Moroki on GB News, live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now new figures from the Home Office have revealed some interesting migration news. The number of migrants coming to live, work and study in the UK from non-EU countries has soared in the first year of our new post-Brexit points-based immigration system.
Yeah, absolutely. According to the Home Office's figures, the number of work-related visas has increased by 25%. So the introduction as well of the skilled worker route in January last year led to a third more skilled migrants entering the UK than the previous system. Well, joining us now to discuss this further is Brendan Chilton, CEO of the Independent Business Network, who's previously also the General Secretary of Labour Leave. Brendan, does this smash a couple of little misconceptions about Britain? Firstly, that we're a racist little isolated rock who doesn't like people with different skin colours, and also B, that, you know, we're not attractive to people who are skilled workers.
Well, I correct you, racist, cold, windy little rock is what they told us we would be if we left the European Union. You're going to get all the insults in there, Patrick. I think this is really good news. Clearly, outside of the European Union, Britain is an attractive destination for people wishing to come here to work and to do business. Of course, the COVID restrictions over the past few years have made that slightly more difficult, but now we are returning to normal. It is very encouraging to see so many people from around the world, particularly from outside the European Union, coming to the United Kingdom, because over the past 40 years, we have had a totally unfair migration system, which has placed European migration ahead of that of non-European migration to the United Kingdom.
Yeah, and that was one of the issues I very much understood, one of the grievances people had who wanted to vote Brexit, that it favoured European migrants more than anything. So, if anything, it wasn't racist to vote Brexit because you're opening up the world more to people who are largely not white from non-EU countries. Do you think a lot of Brexiteers will be happy with this then, because the reality is it is an increase in migration, yes, but it's an increase in skilled migrants. So people know that the people coming over here are people we need in our economy that are going to be productive. I'm not saying immigrants aren't, but people that are going to be productive for our economy's needs at this time.
Well, I think the whole point of our leaving the European Union was that we would be able to then determine the type of immigration and the quantity of immigration that we wanted into the United Kingdom. Now, of course, some people will be happy with these increased numbers, others will not be happy. Personally, I think we need to be looking at our population as a whole. And at the moment, our domestic population is an ageing population. And if we are to be able to have enough people in the workforce to pay for the public services that we need to care for that ageing population, if we are to have as big a consumer market as other countries, when we've got growing power blocks in the world, we're going to have to grow our population. There are two ways of doing this: encourage the domestic population to breed more, or to have more migration. I think the fact that we have got skilled migration coming into the United Kingdom is a positive thing. It will help us grow our own economy, diversify our skills and trade and domestic capabilities. And also, I mean, let's be honest, you know, the more people come into this country, the more diverse and enriched we are as a country, and the more chance we've got of generating the new products, the new skills and the new services that people will want in the future. So all in all, I think a very good thing.
I just wanted to pick up on something there. You use the word enriched, right? But I think there are a lot of people, certainly, you know, in certain northern pockets, shall we say, who have seen rapid mass migration. The demographics of their area change significantly, and therefore certain changes that come with that. And just to put up, I suppose, the other side of this story is some of our viewers or our listeners may be looking at this now and thinking, well, actually, if it's non-EU migration, I suppose technically that tends to be people potentially of a different ethnicity, I suppose, different race, potentially different religions, etc., etc., etc. And they might have concerns about the changes that might bring to their area. What would you say to that?
Well, of course, any change is, you know, naturally resisted by people because it's the unknown, it's new, it's not the familiar. But actually, you know, the levels of pigmentation in someone's skin shouldn't be something that alarms you, really. I also think, you know, a lot of British people are also moving abroad. Now, while for the communities to which migrants are coming to the UK, I think, you know, go out and talk to people, integrate, get off your phones, go and hang out in the pub and the community centres and the parks and speak to people that are coming to the country, and you'll find they're just like you. They all want to get on, they all want to make money, they all want to have a good family, and they all want a good holiday at the end of the year. And I think once those barriers are overcome and people actually integrate, the divisions and concerns people have quickly go away. And I see that not just in northern pockets, but also down here in the south of England, where we don't tend to get a lot of people coming because we're largely a rural area. But actually, once people talk to one another, you find out they're good people and everyone tends to get on. That might sound a little bit motherhood and apple pie, but I think it's the reality of the situation.
No, I think, look, your heart's in the right place. Obviously it is. Is it on the job of the quotes-unquote indigenous population to aid the integration, or is it on the job more so of the people coming here to ensure that they integrate, do you think?
Well, I think it's I know, again, not to sound like a damn Lib Dem, but I think it's a 50-50 job. You know, the reality is unless people coming to the country make a concerted effort to learn English, to fit in, to understand our laws and customs, they never will fit in. But at the same time, if we, as if you want a better phrase, the indigenous population, sit here in our little cells and don't mix with those who are coming, they'll never mix either. So it's to and fro, and we've all got to get along at the end of the day. And I look at this now from a business perspective. Is it healthy to have a wider market, a broader market, different types of people with different interests, different skills and different services? Yes. And so it's our duty, if for no other reason than community cohesion, it's also a reason for economic growth to have these people integrated and doing well part of our country.
Brendan, just one final question. Obviously, Labour's record on migration has not been looked too kindly upon by many people. Some would say they're the reason we got here in the first place. Do you think Keir Starmer even has a coherent strategy for tackling illegal migration? We asked Stephen Pound this a second ago. He seemed to be a bit confused himself. He suggested ID cards might solve the problem. Working with Europe, very broad solution there. Does Keir Starmer have a plan?
One thing that I know Sir Keir Starmer has called for over the past few years is increased border staff. One of the things I know, and I've been on, I think, Patrick's show and others many times discussing the migrant crossings across the English Channel. One of the problems is our border staff is understaffed and under-resourced. And so that's one area where I will say well done, Keir Starmer, for calling for that to be improved over the past few years. But the broader principle of what migration and immigration policy will look like under a future Labour government, I think the party has still got to spell out. People want to know how many, people want to know the type of migration in terms of skilled and unskilled, etc. And of course, what resources we're going to put in to helping people integrate those things we discussed, language, etc. That is something Labour is going to have to spell out before the next general election.
Good stuff, Brendan. Thank you very much. Brendan Chilton there, CEO of the Independent Business Network. Great to have you back on the show. Of course, former General Secretary as well of Labour Leave. But moving on
I do miss, sensible Labour people. There's not many on the shadow benches, is there?
No, I thought that was quite nice, really. There wasn't a pronoun in sight. There was none of that stuff. It was just, pretty rational conversation.
Yes. Don't we miss that?
Didn't have pink hair. Anyway. Right, moving on now. Almost a third of manufacturers do not believe the government's plan to level up is actually happening and have yet to see any tangible benefit to their business. Interesting is, how have you felt the force of levelling up wherever you are? GBViews at gbnews.uk. I suspect not.
Yes, well, a survey conducted by Make UK shows that disenchantment towards levelling up is particularly pronounced in the North East, Yorkshire and the Humber, East Anglia and the North West, all regions the government was supposed to be levelling up.
Yeah, exactly, that's right, isn't it? And joining us now is Verity Davidge, Make UK's Director of Policy. Thank you very much. Now, you obviously conducted the study, you champion engineering and manufacturing in the UK while supporting business, etc. So is levelling up just a myth?
I wouldn't say it's a myth. I think that manufacturers have perhaps different views to what levelling up is. Our survey found that, as you say, a third of manufacturers aren't seeing the tangible benefits of levelling up, and the further away from London you go, actually you see that disenchantment and disconnect even more. I think one of the problems is that actually government has launched various initiatives, strategies, pots of funding available, but they're often scattergun and piecemeal, that they're just not connecting with manufacturers on the ground. And the challenge is if we don't start addressing this now, we'll just see further disengagement. So it's really important that we start communicating better between government and industry, because if levelling up is the thing that we all want to achieve, then the manufacturing sector is the sector to back. It's the one that is creating high quality jobs, above average wages, investing in R&D, but at the moment it's not quite kind of ticking that box, and what we're seeing is the levelling up agenda is not supporting manufacturers in the way we had hoped, or I'm sure government had hoped.
Brilliant. OK, all right. Well, look, it's great. A bit short and sweet, that, but I'm sorry, we've got to rattle through stuff to the end of the show, but you got your point across there. You'll have to come back on, because levelling up, for me, is a very, very, very important issue in this country, certainly around the areas that was originally from, and manufacturing certainly is the way to do that. Anyway, Verity Davidge there, thank you very much, Make UK's Director of Policy. So they did this study, basically, saying that we need to crack on and level something up.
Yeah, well, whatever that means, eh? Shall we wrap up the show with a few little stories that you might have missed at home? This one made me laugh. This one made me laugh. Woke diversity advocates have come after the Scottsdale United School District for hiring a DJ in blackface to play at their PTA disco night. However, he wasn't in blackface.
Oh, no.
DJ Kim Kojo Hunter is actually black. One of the diversity advocates in question, however, doubled down on his accusation of blackface after being told the DJ was literally actually black. He writes, quote, "A black man apparently in blackface is an entirely different discussion than a white person. I did not state that the person was white, but nonetheless, looking on his Facebook page, it seems at the very least he's in darker makeup, if not blackface."
What?
He's literally black. He's not in blackface.
What? I don't understand this. So he's...
Basically, they've made it...
black up if you're black.
Well, they made a complaint that somebody was in blackface.
Yeah, no, I get that, but he's black.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't realise that, did they?
This is the kind of thing you think you'd do your due diligence on before you went on a massive woke tirade, isn't it?
Yeah.
But hang on a second, what does that say? Because, so hang on, reading between the lines there, this particular chap must have thought that the guy was in blackface because he looked too stereotypically like a black man. So who's the racist there? I don't know, that's actually brought a tear to my eyes. That's absolutely cracked me up.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah, it made me laugh.
You're going to have to do this.
Well, in another story of authorities urging people not to do stupid things, police in Dorset had to urge would-be ravers to please not rave on or across an army firing range. Turns out some revellers were attempting to cross the site as a shortcut to a nearby party in East Lulworth on Sunday night, while the illegal party attracted more than 1,000 people, with police still trying to clear the area 12 hours later.
I don't know about you, I normally have a few shots at a rave. No? No?
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, there we go. Flipping that. Right, no, but seriously though, I mean, that was nuts. The illegal rave scene now is an interesting one.
Is it? I don't think I've ever been to one.
Well, it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You meet some interesting characters normally, of course, until the police arrive. But anyway.
1,000 people. What a party, though, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like a good one, especially after the couple of years we've had. You know, it'd be nice to get out and about, but of course, do it legally and not on a firing range.
Yes, that's the key part, really, isn't it? Well, now look, the former mayor of Atlanta, USA, Keisha Lance Bottoms, claims she was turned away from a chain. She was turned away from a chain restaurant at a mall for wearing leggings. Miss Bottoms, which is an apt surname for this story, tweeted on Friday that she was refused service at the Capitol Grill because, unbelievably, she did not meet the dress code.
Do you remember when Jess Glynn tried to get into Wet Fish wearing a shell suit that a certain former member of the BBC would have been proud of? Yeah?
I'd never even heard of Wet Fish. I'm guessing it's an upmarket restaurant style.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's nice. It's lovely, actually. She's trying down sometime. But, and she was the classic, do you know who I am bit of it. And they said, yeah, but you still don't meet the dress code. So there you go. Anyway, the restaurant's website, apparently, in this case, says, for the comfort of all guests and to better deliver on our promise of a refined atmosphere, proper dress is required. Thank you for not wearing gym attire, sweatpants, tank tops, hats, clothing with offensive language or images, exposed undergarments. I mean, the outside of that restaurant...
How...
The outside of that restaurant, forgive me, did not look like it had a particularly refined atmosphere inside it. But I don't know, maybe I could be wrong, I'm not sure I'd know class if it hit me in the face. So
well, you've been to Wet Fish, apparently, so...
The Capitol Grill there. I mean, I wouldn't say it looks Michelin-starred, would you?
No, I mean, I don't think they have any... What restaurant has any business saying don't wear leggings? I mean, it's not the Ritz. And even at the Ritz, you probably could wear leggings.
I don't know. There are times I've seen some people in leggings, and I do think that should be illegal. But there we go. Anyway, moving on. A Lib Dem peer has asked the clocks to go forward for another hour to help with the cost of living squeeze. Oh, here we go. Well, John Lee says that moving to Paris time would help maximise daylight, therefore reducing the household bills and electricity.
Yes, as inflation reaches its highest level in 30 years, Lord John Lee says we should seriously look at double summertime as a cheap way of easing the cost of living.
Is this the worst idea in the world?
Yes.
Is it? Is it? Why? I mean, if it eases the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, but come on, I mean, really? Just change... That's not a solution. The people are facing higher than ever household bills, so let's move the clock forward an hour. What's the difference is that going to make, really? It's going to make an hour's worth of difference.
So they don't have to put the... Well, yeah.
But that's not the solution, surely.
Well, I don't know, it's an option.
It's an option?
An option. Anyway, right. Very quickly, a Kentucky man with an anxiety disorder asked his employer not to throw him a surprise birthday party, as the event could trigger a panic attack. Well, guess what, ladies and gents? He's just won $450,000 in court after his employer did just that.
Well, despite his plea, Kevin Burling's employer, Gravity Diagnostics, threw him a surprise lunchtime celebration in August 2019, as per company tradition. He had a panic attack and was strongly reprimanded for having a panic attack, he says, which caused another panic attack. And days later, he was fired for violating a workplace violence policy.
This story is nuts. So this guy said, please don't throw me a surprise birthday, I'll have a panic attack. He had a panic attack. He was told off for having a panic attack, had another panic attack, and then went in and was violent about it. Kevin sued Gravity Diagnostics, and the jury found he had suffered adverse employment action because of his anxiety disability and awarded him close to $500,000 for his troubles.
Well,
Gosh.
I think that's fair enough.
But two stories here have absolutely done me.
I think that's fair enough, you know. It's like, say, if you had a disability, if you were epileptic, and you said, don't throw me a disco because the strobe lights will give me an epileptic fit, and then your employer throws you a disco with strobe lights, I think you'd have the right to sue them and get a substantial amount of money.
I like the fact that that company's just gone, no, it's company policy, you're having a party whether or not you like it or not, and I suppose it was his party, and he could cry if he wanted. Anyway, that's it from us here at To The Point, but don't you dare go away, because coming up next is the briefing with the wonderful Gloria Di Piero.
See you tomorrow.
Hello there, I'm Stephen Keats with your latest Met Office forecast. And after what wasn't a bad weekend for most places, some sunny spells to start the new week. Showers too, more so than over the weekend, but light winds. If you're in the sunshine this afternoon, it shouldn't feel too bad. That said though, there will be a fair number of showers breaking out across parts of England and Wales, a few heavy ones in the mix here, and likewise there'll also be some heavy showers for parts of Northern Ireland, a few for Western Scotland. Elsewhere though, some dry weather, variable amounts of cloud. With light winds though, shouldn't feel too bad with temperatures in the low to mid-teens for most of us. A little bit cooler though, where we see those showers. Now on through this evening then, those showers will tend to fade away as they pull away towards the southwest of the UK. Likewise, the showers across western parts of Northern Ireland, parts of Western Scotland also fading away. So into the early hours of Wednesday, a lot of dry weather out there, variable amounts of cloud, some low cloud, mistiness, perhaps some sea fog encroaching onto parts of northeast England and the eastern Scotland coast. But